Hello and welcome to the Stories of Generation Growth, a new series from Changemakers featuring high-growth firms from the Goldman Sachs 10,000 Small Businesses alumni. I'm Michael Heyman, and throughout this series I'll be joined by my guest, Charlotte Keenan, the programme's head. Together we will speak with business leaders who could well be at the heart of a new generation of growth for the UK. But what is generation growth? Well, it's an idea driven by the Small Business Manifesto, a call to action which shares insights and policy ideas on how we can release the potential of high-growth companies to thrive. We'll be discussing the key recommendations of that manifesto and how we make them real. Joining us today is Byron Dixon, Chief Executive and founder of Microfresh International, an award-winning technology that keeps products fresh for longer, helping to reduce waste. Byron, welcome to Changemakers. You brought your own pillow. First time I've sat in an interview where the guest has sort of brought their sleeping material. I hope that's not the shape of things to come. Good to see you. Show us the pillow.
Thank you, Michael. And I will show you the pillow. And the reason I brought the pillow is not because I'm going to be relaxed and laid back, but to show you our brand. So there you can see the Microfresh brand. That's what we do. Microfresh goes into products and it stops bacteria growing. We're also in Laura Ashley, which is a much nicer representation of our brand. As you can see there, when I walk through the street with it, people do look at me a bit freakily. But yeah, that's why I brought it with me today.
Charlotte, a fine succession of guests that have been sort of like advertising their products left, right and centre through our conversations. You know Byron very well. How would you introduce our guest today?
I mean, we've worked together for close on a decade.
It's a decade,
I mean,
it
really actually is a decade. And how I would describe Byron, in all of your stories, I mean, you are an entrepreneur that spots the opportunity, and you're going to tell us the John Lewis story in a second, I know. But you are ambitious, opportunity driven. You know, the story of growth in your business is really quite extraordinary. But I think frankly, Michael, I'd centre on the fact that you're just a really good bloke. You're really kind. You are a great, highly supportive member of our alumni community. And frankly, it's just a pleasure working with you. And I think that
I'll take that.
You're going to take that. Good bloke with a great business.
Yeah, making me blush.
Okay, so for viewers watching this, in terms of you've briefly sort of, I suppose, introduced Microfresh in terms of actually a couple of the products, but it's more than that, isn't it? Tell us a little bit more about the business.
Wow. Well, where do I start? We're a proper global brand. So we started off as a chemical treatment, which is quite boring. I'm a chemist. I'm probably quite boring as well. And then we realised
you're definitely not boring.
That didn't come out in the description.
I made a product to stop shoes going mouldy in transit because that's my history in the footwear industry, and I can do chemistry. And then we realised it stops bacteria, which sounds, again, really boring, but I didn't realise that means it stops things from smelling and building up odours. So we approached some retailers and said, although your shoes won't be mouldy anymore, there's an advantage to the consumer. So if you buy shoes with Microfresh technology, they'll last longer because they won't smell. That extended to textiles, i.e. bedding, clothing, towels and bath mats. So you can see our brand in most retail stores in the UK and Europe. We're an ingredient brand like Gore-Tex. We go into things, and that's what we do. We were sustainability before it was a thing.
I mean, you went on the programme, 10,000 Small Businesses. I mean, was that a big part of the thinking about how to go global, about actually how to take it to the next level?
Yeah, and I know it sounds cynical now, but prior to 10KSB, I think I was a very different person.
In what way?
I had this brand, I had this company which I liked, and it was more like a lifestyle business. Everybody got paid. I was happy. I wasn't stressed. Then I went on 10KSB, and I remember the first week at Aston, and I thought, I'm playing at this. This is actually potentially a massive global business. And it was the GS program that gave me the confidence to do what I'm doing today. You know, we looked at new markets, we pushed doors open, and we looked globally.
Is that a common factor? I mean, I must say, for people watching Aston, but obviously being Aston Business School, I mean, Charlotte, you're taking cohorts of companies through. I mean, does that characterization of the experience ring true with how you see it across the board?
I mean, absolutely. I mean, that's the goal, right? That we take growth-ready businesses and we help you realize that, and we help you see the potential that you have, and we give you the skills and opportunities to make that happen.
Let's go back there, because I feel like we're at the kind of like where we are today, the Byron of today, and some of those influences. But let's go back to the start, because I read a really interesting quote that you said that growing up in social housing inspired me to repurpose our technology to combat damp and mold. So you had a lived experience that took you to where you are today. Pick up the story for us in terms of how your start in life influenced and affected the person you've become.
Yeah, I mean, my parents came from Jamaica in the 60s, and they had 2 children, and I was born here, so they had 5 children. My dad went back to Jamaica, so my mum moved to Leicester. So we grew up in a single-parent household with 5 kids in social housing, council housing as it was called then. And mold was just a thing. It was just a thing that everybody had. You kind of brushed it off the wall. I had asthmatic conditions. I can't say whether it was due to that, but as a child, I remember always having breathing issues. And then I got to about 11 or 12 and I grew out of it. So it was a bit of a distant memory. When Microfresh became popular, and very early on during the GS 10KSB programme, through Aston, I was put in touch with Innovate UK because people had asked me if it works in construction. To stop mold on walls. So with Innovate UK's money, we developed a version that you can use in social housing as a preventative treatment.
Yeah.
And that's kind of the story of why it's called Homefresh now as a separate brand.
And I guess, I mean, it's so interesting, Charles, on the idea of, like, I suppose, entrepreneurs solving big problems, big issues. I mean, mold is something, is right there, right? They're big stories all of the time. People losing their lives to it. But I suppose it's also, though, about a wider sense that actually a lot of business people see themselves as being part of big answers to big societal challenges.
Well, yes, I would say that, but I think they all start with a very personal, very necessary problem.
That's right.
And that's the root. And then obviously with this, I mean, this is why your business is so exciting and has grown to such extraordinary lengths because of that need. Mm-hmm. But it's a personal story at the heart of it.
Why did you choose to study? Because obviously you went on to study chemistry, and you actually, you can see when you look back on your story that there's a thread to what gets you to Microfresh. Yeah, but actually, be quite interesting. It probably didn't seem like that at the time. It'd be quite interesting to understand what kind of took you towards Microfresh in terms of the decisions that you took, I suppose, to start with, to actually study science.
There's a very simple answer to that. I can't do anything else.
So
as a child, I remember being interested in things, blowing up and changing. And I asked for a chemistry set when I was about 7. So I was one of those kids that had the chemistry set. And then when I started to go through school, I thought, this is great. You can burn things. You can blow stuff up. You can do reactions.
It's the best ad for science I've heard.
While I wanted to do subjects where you just sit there writing all day long or doing maths, when you can blow stuff up. And I just loved it. And I always loved it. And I could do it. And my headmistress spotted that I had a very short attention span. I think these days it would be ADHD.
That's right, yeah.
And she came from another school where my cousin was head boy. So I had a bit of a blie there. The other teachers said to her, he's a bit of a nuisance. But she thought, he's got potential. Just push him into something that will take up his brain space. And that was chemistry. So I loved it. I could do it. I found it just second nature. And I couldn't understand why other kids found it so complicated.
But alongside that, disruptive.
Yes. Yeah, I was disruptive as a child. I wasn't violent or anything like that, but I was the kid in class that was always bored and made the other kids laugh, which the teachers absolutely hated because it slowed everybody down.
It always takes one teacher and one person to spot.
That's right.
Well, it's one of those things, isn't it? In school, the worst thing you can be called is a disruptive influence.
That's
in business, it's the ultimate accolade.
That's right. That's right. And ironically, my medal is for industry and innovation, which goes with being disruptive and short attention span.
Yeah. How do you see the disruptive, I suppose, personality in business, Charlotte?
Oh, I mean, it's a gift, right? equally surrounding yourself with the right team, right? I mean, you need the kind of stability around
Absolutely.
the disruptor, right? And
Yeah.
and I know we'll get onto your team and talent,
Yeah.
but actually, you, Byron, as an entrepreneur that's been able to, essentially with this market, you've created the market, right? And then you continue to, as you talked about Homefresh, right? You've continued to innovate within it.
That's true, because creating a market, I didn't realise at the time, but it wasn't a thing before Microfresh came along.
Yeah.
And when we went to retailers and said, we can make your products last longer, you can use lower wash temperatures, less detergent, they all said, why would we want to do that?
So I'm thinking this disruptive influencer that we're meeting is, on the one hand, an innovative mind, because you like to sort of make things happen. On the one hand, is a disruptive personality. How does ambition then fit into that? In terms, because obviously you've created a business that has gone global, which is the dream for many small business leaders. How does that decision start with the fact of, I'm not going to go and use that chemistry degree and go and work for a major pharmaceuticals company or whatever it might be, or processes company. I'm actually going to start my own business, and you know what? I'm going to do something big with it.
I think there's a couple of things there. The first thing is, I did actually work for a pharmaceutical business, not in the pharmaceutical division, but I was inherently bored. So when I started Microfresh, I wanted it to grow in retail, and then the GS program made me realise that we could take this global. And because it goes into any material, that's the scary bit because of my attention span, doing a bit of everything all over the place. I got a great team behind me that said, focus. And when I did the ambassador program at Oxford, Goldman Sachs did a destroy and rebuild on my business. And they made it quite clear that the best thing for me to do, and this is throughout the class, is to focus on Microfresh and take that global.
And just for context, when we say global, again, just what does that mean? I mean, you're manufacturing in multiple countries.
No, we manufacture all in the UK.
All in the UK.
So the DBT is now, they love us. We make it in the UK.
So the Department for Business and Trade.
Department of Business and Trade, yeah. We have offices in, I'll just try and reel them off, India, Pakistan, Vietnam, China, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, UAE. And the other side, we're now in the US, Mexico, and Jamaica, Trinidad, and we're about to open in Colombia.
That's huge.
It is huge.
So it's east and west.
I mean, I'm interested in kind of like what when you look at a number of entrepreneurs across the board with global stories like Byron's. I mean, do you see character traits that, Charlotte, in this that you would say you can spot that type of entrepreneur? Is there a type, or actually can it be anyone, anywhere, anytime?
I think it can kind of be anyone, anywhere. Again, with that ambition, and let's hear a bit about the first market that you went to. And I think so many entrepreneurs struggle with the kind of the first jump, but once you've done it once, you can do it again and again.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
We'll pick that up for us. What was your first market? What was and how easy was it for you?
Our first overseas market,
Yeah.
China.
Right. You picked an easy one then.
Yeah, so I had a friend living in China.
Jersey or something like that.
No. And he said to me, you need to be in China. And I said, we're a little business in Leicester. And he said, no, Brian, I'm telling you need to be in China. And he said, this will give you the time scale. He said, you need to be in China before the Olympics. So that was 2007. He said, you need to get over here and have a look and get an office. And we did a kind of bet. He said, listen, if you come over and it doesn't work, I'll pay half your airfare. So I went over and immediately I saw the potential. Because a lot of Western goods are made in China. Even that's 17 years ago. And they want to be supplied locally. So I thought, if we have a depot in China, we can supply the local manufacturers that are shipping bedding and clothing and footwear back to the West.
So you make it in the UK.
All made in the UK.
Take it to your depot in China.
That's right.
Insert it in the products that are made in China, and it comes back again.
That's right. That's right.
Pretty cool.
It strikes me that you don't have a problem with putting bets on the table. I mean, the whole of it, I mean, as in like, I'm going to go to China, I'm going to grow multi-markets, I'm going to do, I mean, has there ever been has that journey into business just been one where you just thought, I know where I'm going, I know what I'm doing, this is what I'm about? Or has it been a more circuitous journey for you in terms of actually how you've dealt with doubt, how you've dealt with risk, how you've dealt with all of these, I suppose, factors that are the fellow travellers in any business sort of experience?
Yeah, it's not plain sailing at all. And if anybody in business tells you it is, they're lying. And that's any business. I just see the opportunities. And I think once you've done it in one place, it's much easier to replicate. And I think that's something I learned again through the program is rather than going to another country and into another market, we had calls from the Russian prison service saying we could do with Microfresh in our bed linen. Well, at the time we weren't doing bed linen in the UK. So what we did is it was very easy to take the model we had in the UK to another country and then move it overseas.
I'm not sure the Russian prison service is. I'm not wonder what they were like as a customer. But anyway, maybe we shouldn't spend too much time on that, Charlotte.
That's a key question, right? I mean, you're someone that in some senses has been blessed with opportunity, or at least that's the perception. But how do you stay focused? I mean, how do you have the discipline to say no to the Russian prison service, but you're going to continue supplying John Lewis? Or
because I have, a bit like my mother with the harness when I was trying to run off across the street, I have very good people around me.
Give you a good yank.
That's right. They pull me back. We now have a board, which is very good for me as a person to give me direction because I can do this, I can do that. And I used to work for Echo. And ironically, the owner of Echo and I had the same birthday. So we had this kind of, camaraderie going on. And he taught me how to have a business, how to grow a business. And he said, there's things you should and shouldn't do. And try to establish what your identity is as a business and stick to it. When I started my own business, I didn't do that. I went off in all different tangents. And then it came back to me what he said. Because what I realised was we were running out of cash because we were trying to do too many things and it was 10% of everything. We said, no, bring it all back. Let's do 75% of what we know and make some money.
On a different note, Byron, I think under 1% of SMEs in the UK are led by a Black founder. And you must be one of the top 10 or 20 Black business leaders in this country. Have you found it hard? And has that been a challenge for you? And what advice would you have to other young Black entrepreneurs?
The advice, I'll do it in reverse.
Yeah.
So the advice I'd give to young Black entrepreneurs is it's not about colour. You've got to have a great business that's owned by a Black person. Anybody can see that. And that's something I try and drive when I speak to other Black entrepreneurs is I want people to say Microfresh is a great business. It's a great brand. It's a great product. It's the best in class. Oh, and it's owned by a Black guy. Not it's a Black-owned business because by definition, that puts you on a different level. So when we interface with corporations, for argument's sake, we have the right regulatory stuff, we have the right certification, all the insurance, all that kind of stuff to be a tier 1 supplier. But that takes time. But I say to Black entrepreneurs, make your product or your service the best it can be, and then make you the best you can be, and then the colour thing comes at the end.
When you talk to a lot of business leaders, is that they'll storyfy their life based on, I suppose, the stage that really spoke to them. So for some, it's the startup journey. For some, quite often it's the startup journey. For some, it's the scale journey. And for some, it's the selling up part of that journey. I mean, I suppose the first two are relevant here. When you think about your own experience and the bit where, where the story lights up for you, where's the sort of balance between start and scale, do you think?
That's really tough because in the UK, we have a culture of startups. I think we're third in the world for startups and 13th for scale-ups. If you look at the monetary value of that, it's huge. But for me, the startup phase was tough because we had zero turnover for 5 years. So I was scrabbling around even trying to get a car. The scale-up bit is massively exciting because now you've got the base, you've got the people behind you, and you've got the vision. And I think that makes life so much more fun.
Do you think we're sufficiently excited as a society, Charlotte, about scaling? Because, I mean, the startup story, we see it from TV shows to, that's the well-understood bit. But the journey, up that sort of hill, up that mountain, I mean, to what degree do we need to sort of like get the same sense of buzz, do you think?
Oh, huge, I think, Michael. I mean, you said it. I mean, the economic potential, right, in converting those startups. And this is a phenomenal country to start a business. But the economic uplift comes when those businesses scale, right? And we need to do everything that we can to help, more people become like businesses like you, right? And showcase the talent and the extraordinary stories that we have here domestically.
Well, and let's look at some of the, I suppose, the challenges, opportunities of that. The Small Business Manifesto has highlighted a number of those, from access to talent, to finance, to sustainability. These sort of areas that I suppose that are, the big considerations of any scaling business. How have they factored for Microfresh?
Well, it's all owned by me today, still. That may change. But as I think I was on national radio saying what I thought of access to finance, and we are a global business. So we say to investors, you're not just competing with people down the road or in the north or in the south, you're competing with the world. And the attitude in the US to scaling up an investment is so different. It's so much more conducive to you being a partner with your investor. And I think over here, there's a bit of a culture of the investor knows everything. You're lucky to have got as far as you have today, and you need them to get to the next phase.
So there is an American dream.
There's an American dream. It's the truth. Whereas in the US, they look at you just to say, oh my God, you managed to get that business from zero to where you are today. How can I help you take it to the next level or the Amazon level or, that's the conversation that you're having.
A lot of work on the funding climate, though, Charlotte, in terms of things that are going on to, I suppose, to try and address something like that. How do you see it?
Well, Byron, you've been particularly vocal in a number of our conversations about the funding environment in the UK, right? And just the kind of the disparity and opportunity between the UK and the US and some of the challenges that you've felt here. Because, you're absolutely right, Michael. We need to be able to fund these businesses in the UK. We need to be able to keep them in the UK. If you eventually end up listing, if that's the route that you take, we want that to be on the London Stock Exchange. We don't want it to be on the New York Stock Exchange, etc. But what's your own personal experience of that journey?
Of the
funding and finding the right funding, and
presumably you have funded the business, right? That has happened. Yeah,
myself, bootstrapped, which is a word that I'd hardly heard until I went to the US. So it stays that way. What we want to do in the US, we don't want to take 15 years doing what we're doing in the UK. So that may require external investment, and we've had conversations over in the US.
You mentioned, earlier about thinking about where the business goes, the strategy for the business. Tell us about how that pertains to your people and actually how presumably a people-hungry business, as you scale, you need more people to actually do more work. How's that side of it fared?
It's good, but we've kissed a lot of frogs. I've kissed a lot of frogs to find the prince, or the princess, should I say. And right now, we have the best team we've ever had. I can say that. Because what I've learned is my role is to drive the culture. And before that, I was working in the business. I was doing things in the business like an employee. I know that's... but what I've learned is to get a good board. I've always seen a board as, like your parents. But now I realise that it's massively influential, and it adds to the business, it adds to me, and it gives me structure. And worldwide, we now have a culture that's replicated. If you go to any Microfresh office around the world, you'll see a similar culture.
Let's pick up on that culture piece, Charlotte. It's the attitude. It's as Peter Drucker said, it's the sort of like culture eat strategy for breakfast. That's the big intangible, isn't it, in terms of what drives ambitious businesses along?
And that's why the leader is so important, right, in businesses like this, and actually why through 10,000 Small Businesses, our goal is exactly as you've just said, right, that you step back from the day-to-day.
That's right.
And that you hire smarter, you hire the best, and that you inspire those other people to drive the business. And I think what's going to be interesting to hear from you, Byron, is actually tell us how many people you have globally, but as you've built the business and as the business has grown, how have you maintained that culture? It's easy to kind of have a culture when you're 5, 10 people, but when you're hundreds of people in different locations, what is the Microfresh North Star?
Yeah, well, it was a massive difficult journey because I didn't realise that I had to drive the culture. I thought my job was to drive turnover, and then through the Goldman Sachs program to drive profits and lots of other things. There's people much smarter than me at doing that. There's people that have been to finance school. There's people that have been CFOs. There's people that have been strategists. And I thought, you know what? I'm not good at all that other stuff.
Yeah.
My number one role is to drive the culture. And that means going and seeing people around the world, checking they're happy, looking at how they've a smile on the face. Again, I learned this from Echo because the owner of Echo, Carl Toosby, rest his soul, would go overseas and walk into his own factories and look at the people on the shop floor and see if they're happy.
But how to Charles, how hard has it been and how many people are we actually talking about?
Worldwide, about 240. I'm not going to say it's easy, and it isn't easy, but it's something that you have to do little and often. Drive the culture.
And do you ever get all of those people together?
We are going to, yeah.
That's exciting.
We are going to. So we've got a mini
Microfresh
conference. We've got a mini conference in Dubai in November, but next year is the first Microfresh worldwide conference.
That's great.
And we think that's going to be in Dubai.
Yeah, I guess what we've been talking about throughout our conversation is the journey of scale. It's the journey of change and how you make change happen. But it's also, I suppose, about how that disruptive spirit sort of prospers and lives through these sort of various phases of the business journey. People watching this might be at various different phases of their career. They might be thinking about it. They might be doing it. What's the advice you'd give to people that are, sort of maybe a few steps back in that journey in terms of actually what you've learned about yourself and the advice you'd give to others?
I would say, I've said this before, treat it like a plunge pool, not a swimming bath. So jump in, both feet. It's going to hurt, but you'll be better off for it.
I can see the young chemist. It's going to splash a lot as well.
You really will. If you stand at the edge, dipping your toes, is it warm enough? Is it cold enough? Whatever. It's going to take forever. Jump in. It is going to hurt, but you'll be better off for it. You'll be fitter for it. And it's more fun.
Great advice.
Well, and also, I think with such an exciting end, we didn't need that pillow after all. So, Byron, thanks for joining us on Changemakers.
Thank you. Thank you, Michael. Thank you, Charlotte.